And we want to thank Stan for being with us here tonight on Interstellar Realities Radio. That's blogtalkradio.com/Interstellar Realities. And, Brother Stan, I know that you're on the Hagman and Hagman Report every Tuesday night or most Tuesday nights, and I do enjoy catching up with you there quite a bit. And if you can remember to please let Joe know that he should have an email for me in his inbox. And
all right.
Looking forward to him. But, Stan, so much is happening in the world around us as far as apocalyptic signs are concerned. We have been in an extraordinary season for years now, and there's so much I want to ask you about tonight. I'm talking from like the latest resurgence of the Planet X in the mainstream, clear down to do you believe that the sixth seal in Revelation could be talking about a pole shift? But I just want you to launch us out and let our audience know what has your eye right now as far as global events are concerned. I mean, a week ago we heard the State of the Union address. Since then, of course, there have been major events transpire in Saudi Arabia. The economies of the world seem to be in turmoil. America is putting the squeeze on Russia. Terrorism is threatening so many people around the world. And as my good friend L.A. Marzulli likes to say, the UFO phenomenon is real and burgeoning and not going away. So, Stan, what have you been watching as far as the signs of the times are concerned? And if you will, just maybe walk us through 2015 as you have thought about it, and just maybe give us a little bit of an idea of what you're expecting.
How many questions did you ask me now?
I know. I'm a class. That's a classic for me, man. I throw out 20, 30 questions at a clip. But anything
no,
you want to
my
talk
mind
to?
is spinning at the moment.
I'm sorry about
look,
that, Brother Stan.
Well, look, there are a number of things that are on our mind here, Holly and mine. We look at things, and certainly current events are moving us toward some major prophetic developments in 2015. You mentioned that conference back in July 25th or 26th in Colorado Springs, the Prophecy Conference. At that conference, I made 2 lectures only, one about my discovery of the location of the Garden of Eden today, and the other about the prophetic interpretation of 666 being the number of a man, and what that has to do with the identity of the Antichrist of this age. Now, it's not the false prophet, that's the Antichrist. False prophet has some other things that he does after the Antichrist gets a head wound. But anyway, I've been watching the news, as have a lot of people been listening to the Hagman Report and various other shows that I've done for 4 years here, watching to see a Middle Eastern, Islamic supporting, but perhaps not a Muslim himself, at least a supporting leader, military leader, who will have the name Solomon, Soleimani, Suleiman, some derivative of the Middle East interpretation of the name Solomon. Now, in the Bible, for instance, in Hebrew, Solomon is called Shlomo, which is a long way from saying Solomon. So the Arabic, then to English pronunciation being Solomon, I delivered in that lecture about the name of the Antichrist, not to worry so much about the numbers of his, the letters and the numbers of them adding up to 666, but just look exactly at what the Revelation says about the Antichrist. And they say that it's the number of a man, that 666 is the number of a man. And when you look up in the biblical reference to try to translate it from the Bible itself, there's only one person in the Old Testament or anywhere else in the Bible that is referred to by 666, and that is Solomon, King Solomon. His annual income, they seem to say it's annual. I think it was every 3 years, but anyway, his income was rated at 666 talents of gold per year from his mining resources, from trade, and from gifts, etc., from neighboring countries and tribes. Now, 666 talents of gold is about 39,500 or 39,600 pounds of gold. I did find where he got gold from in 3 different locations, certainly not in Israel. One was in Madagascar. Another one's in northwestern India, near the Indus Valley, and another was by trade up in the western side of the Mediterranean Sea in the Morocco area. Now, anyway, why is this important? Because whoever comes to the front, perhaps this year, is what we're watching the news for, with the derivative of the name Solomon, which can be, as I say, those three names, or perhaps even Solomon, who just took over as the ruler in Saudi Arabia because of the death of the king before him. Now, this leader, he's 79 years old. His name is Salman, Salman bin Abdul Aziz, and he's had health issues before. I think he's had a stroke or heart attack, and so he's not in good health. And he may not be some military genius, but he is the head, the king of Saudi Arabia, and he's making conversations now with Obama in Riyadh. They're going to have a meeting there shortly. It just came out over the news wires about 11 minutes ago. So we're watching the guy to see if he does, organize the terrorists they've been supporting, the Saudis have, and come to the forefront as a unifying factor to the Muslim states against ISIS, but for a confederation of Muslim nations. Now, there's another guy on the scene. In fact, there's two others that we've been watching. In my lecture, the only one available at the time, in July last year, was a guy named Abdul Suleiman, who was born in Australia, raised there, became a cleric for the Muslim faith, and a terrorist type. He left Australia 2.5 years ago to join al-Nusra in Syria. He's now moved his way up to second in command. He is against ISIS because ISIS wants to take all of the Islamic nations in the Middle East and form them into one nation or caliphate led by one king or caliph. What Abu Suleiman wants to do in his group, they want to organize all of the Muslim nations into a confederation, so they act as one, as a confederation like the United Nations would, but they still keep their independent nationalities, customs, and laws and that kind of stuff. And of course, this is meeting with more favor in the Middle Eastern nations that are Muslim and would like to join together against the United States and Israel. Now, the other player, this General Qasim Soleimani, is from Iran, and he's been fighting against the Americans initially in Iraq. He's now fighting against ISIS, trying to overthrow them in favor of what Abu Suleiman wants with the al-Nusra Front, and that is this confederation of Muslim nations. Now, they will form this confederation. There may be 5, 6, or 7 nations come together in that confederation, I'm pretty sure, looking at Daniel's interpretation of the 10 toes of iron and clay mixed. And the rest of them will probably come from Western or European nations, not the United States for sure. Now, we know in the last 2 months that the former Prime Minister of Israel, Shimon Peres, has been meeting with the new Pope, who's a Jesuit as well as being, the normal type Catholic Pope. And they have met together, and Peres has suggested with him openly, let us form a one-world religion where we can unite all the religions of the world and get rid of the religious differences that seem to drive wars between nations. So you can see the writing on the wall there. Now, what this looks like is a new idea. But in 1978, when I was in Australia still, I came across color-printed pamphlets from the Catholic Church there, where they were having meetings, gathering the leaders of world religions, including especially Islam, to meet together to form a common dialogue for a common faith on the planet, and the same God, they say. So in 1978, which was, 37, 38 years ago, they were starting this stuff in motion behind the scenes, and now it seems like a new thing in the press with Shimon Peres coming up and saying, here's a new idea. Let's let, Catholicism, Islam, and Christianity, the Protestants, and Hindus and Buddhists. Let's all get together and have one happy family faith on the planet. Now, what that's going to be is, of course, the false religion of the tribulation period, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so I've been watching this guy, Solomon or Soleimani or Suleiman, to see when he would surface and stand out as a military mastermind with military force under his control to force nations in his area to follow him. The other thing that points me at the Solomon being the solution to the Middle East, the apparent solution, is that in Turkey last year, a female reporter for the leading TV news channel there in Istanbul came out and gave a statement, not a one-liner, a multi-paragraph statement about why the Islamic world should allow and help, where needed, Israel to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount. Now, you think, oh, really? But they're not going to move the Dome of the Rock. They're not going to move the existing mosque on the south side. They're going to allow the Israelis to build Solomon's temple, not King Herod's temple, which is too huge. They want Solomon's temple to be rebuilt on the north side where they've got trees and gardens, but still on the Temple Mount, so that the Jews, they say, can worship God in their manner on the Temple Mount, and the Muslims can worship Allah on the dome there on the Temple Mount and in the mosque as well. So they're proposing this because to the Arab Muslim world, King Solomon is a great hero, a prophet, the greatest prophet, perhaps even greater in some of their minds than Muhammad. Now, if you read the Arabic lore about King Solomon, they attribute him with magical powers, with being able to control the jinn, the G-I-N, the genies of the time. And, they have various legends about how Solomon had control over animals to cause them to speak or to dance at his command, and how he had a flying carpet where he could fly himself and some of his personal guard around the country, at the snap of his fingers, and a few other things that made him, the wisest wonder-bar, king leader of that time. So they revere him and would even almost call him like a Messiah figure should he reappear on the scene now, even reborn as, some person here named Solomon or Soleimani or etc. in the Arab world. This is a problem. If you try to find a lot of details about Solomon, about the real number of wives he had, the real number of chariots and horses he had, you find that it breaks down. The evidence has been greatly exaggerated by the legends about his power and his reach. He was only given support by the king of Tyre. It was simply because the king of Tyre had been friends with his father David, and in respect for David, as the Bible says, he supported young King Solomon in his efforts to build the new temple, the first temple to God, to Elohim or Eloheinu, or the various names for God they used at the time. So we now have the groundwork laid for a king, a leader named Solomon, to appear on the world front in the Middle East, to support the building of Solomon's temple, to support the confederation of Arab states that are Muslim, to support a treaty with Israel and perhaps the United States, if we're still in the picture, at that time, with other nations of the Levant on the east side of the Mediterranean and up into Turkey in that region. The Antichrist may not make that treaty, but he will certainly, I'm sure, be able to ratify it, because the false prophet who comes to point everyone to the greatness of the Antichrist and the work he's done to set up a world government, that false prophet is going to be a silver-tongued fellow himself, and will be able to write peace treaty agreement or agreements, as the case may be, will be able to set up and organize a world global currency that is digital. So that guy's power and experience may not be quite as military as the Antichrist, but he's certainly going to follow the Antichrist steps and point to him as a great leader and perhaps use military power as well as the Antichrist doing it. The name of the false prophet is we're going to get to that in time. I have one suspect at the moment, but I'm sure there are going to be some others that will arise after the world falls under the control of the Antichrist first. There's just so many things pointing to almost immediate moves toward forming a one-world government, one-world economy, and the joining of the apparent enemies of this time between the Judeo-Christians and the Muslims around the planet. So this year we have to watch for things, perhaps toward the end of the year, to collapse the world economy, to drive people toward wanting someone to solve it. And I see the writing on the wall, so to speak. The Muslims in the Middle East will follow a Solomon-type leader, and especially if he has magical powers, or at least technology that makes him look magical, they will say this is, the spirit of the original King Solomon come to unify the world, and they will follow him. And whatever kind of false religion comes after that. Interesting enough, though, the 7-year peace treaty that we see spoken of in Daniel and other places is that there was a 7-year peace treaty drawn up in the middle 90s in Oslo. It's called the Oslo Accords. And there were a number of people there involved in drafting that under Shimon Peres. For Israel's representation was Nimrod Novik, Dr. Novik, who was also trained by Henry Kissinger in the States and got his PhDs in the United States. And this same man is now in a position of wealth and behind-the-scenes influence, intelligence-wise, in Israel today. And he's my age. He'll be 70 here within a month or two of when I am. And the fellow has been in the States talking to the Truman Peace Committee or the Truman Peace Organization about world peace and getting rid of the common problems between Islam and Judaism and Christianity. So the original 7-year time did not get the full test, and they threw it aside, the Oslo Peace Accords in the 90s. But suddenly now then they've started to revive it and revamp it to meet current situation in the Middle East. So if we see that Oslo Accords peace treaty come to the forefront and be ratified by somebody in high power, know that that guy is probably, about 99% certain, the Antichrist. And the Antichrist must be revealed to the people of the church before the rapture can occur. So, anyway, I got on my soapbox. Sorry, that's one of the things that's foremost on my mind at the moment.
Well, my goodness, that's incredible information, Brother Stan. And as you were talking, it came to my mind that so many people, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, with so many Christians, I wonder if they even really know the whole story of King Solomon. Because, of course, he authored some of the books in the Bible, and so many times I think people think of him in this great positive light. And for so much of his life, he did do great things. But when you get into 1 Kings chapter 11, man, it just jumps out right at you. And I was just reading over it a little bit here while you were talking about Solomon, just kind of refreshing in my memory, because he fell so far into idol worship. And when he ends the story in 1 Kings chapter 11, when it ends with how Solomon died, he actually tried to kill Jeroboam before he fled to Shishak of Egypt. Now, this Solomon character, man, he's a real head-scratcher, and the prophet told Jeroboam, hey, the only reason that Solomon's going to be allowed to keep this kingdom is because of David, his father. But Solomon just fell way into worshiping some of the most pagan idols of that day. And it's so amazing when you start talking about Solomon and you're linking his name to the mark of the beast. I'd only ever heard, I think, one other person ever mention that, and it was on, I believe, Prophecy in the News. I can't remember for certain, But I remember when they started linking Solomon to his name and the mark of the beast, and they was making those same correlations you're making. Man, I was just so taken back. But when you get in to study the life of Solomon, he really did go down an idol-worshiping road, didn't he, Stan?
Oh, absolutely. He turned way bad. He was really, he had a double portion of wisdom. He was really, really smart, but it led him to his downfall. He got to reading his own press reviews, I'm sure. But then as he grew older, with that many wives, hundreds of them, he was tugged by these wives to go this way and that toward false gods, toward idols and stuff, and toward even child sacrifice to Moloch. And, his great accomplishments, as it were, that are told in the Bible, I think were grossly exaggerated, like the British and the Americans do with the legend of, and the Europeans with the legend of King Arthur. There was a Roman general named Arturo, who we think the actual legend grew from, who stayed in England when the Roman Empire was pulling itself back together in Rome and was retreating from England. He stayed there, and the legend of the Round Table grew from, a fort he set up on top of a hill there. They've found a lot of the artifacts that would indicate that the Round Table was built there. But anyway, we have exaggerated it to Camelot and King Arthur and the 12, the Knights of the Round Table, and I think they've done the same thing, even greater, to King Solomon, and what he actually did. I mean, you go and try to find artifacts that will support that King Solomon ever reigned, ever existed in Israel, and you'll find one or two pieces at the moment, and certainly no palace or anything like that. We think that parts of the proof are buried underneath the southeastern corner of the Temple Mount, and deeper in the digs underneath there. But other than that, the widespread proof from neighboring tribes and things where stones were cut are very, very sketchy. I mean, they only think that King David existed because of a mention of King David in some of the neighboring to the north reports that were carved in stone about Israel King David. I can't remember the exact quote of it, but I've seen that documentary, and so at least we know David was there, and I'm positive of that. And I'm pretty sure that King Solomon existed, but just he wasn't as big as the press releases that followed him, as the fables that built up around him. And I think the devil himself had a hand in promoting the legend of Solomon to be used in this time. It's just... Yeah. Anyway, well, look, when Solomon dedicated the first temple, you'll read that passage there, and Solomon prayed long prayer, and before the men of Israel, it says, and he put a sacrifice there, and then blessed it and asked the Lord to bless it, and fire came down from the heavens and consumed the offering there for the new temple that Solomon had just finished building. Now it says the Antichrist of this age will cause fire to come down in the sight of the men of the world rather than the men of Israel, just in the sight of man. And you can see the parallels are in the Scripture that it will be like a new Solomon. We know a new temple is going to be built and dedicated there, from Daniel. So, boy, I mean, you just have to believe that's how it's intended for us to interpret.
Yeah, it's really amazing, the whole thing you've talked about. I mean, where'd the first half hour of the show go?
Yeah.
Seriously, because we get talking about the Antichrist. Let's just run with that for a second, Brother Stan, because there are so many things about the Antichrist that I don't know if maybe I just haven't been with it for the last 30 years or whatever, but there's so many things I've been learning now that seems to be new to me over the last 2 or 3 years, okay? One thing that I wanted to ask you about, Brother Stan, is that in Daniel chapter 11, I believe 37, 38, and 39, is where the Bible tells us that the Antichrist is going to have certain characteristics. He's not going to have any use for women. He's not going to honor any of the gods of his fathers. he's going to have an allegiance with a strange god. The Bible says that it will be the god of forces, and a lot of translations say fortresses. It goes on down, I think 39 is the verse that says as the Antichrist acknowledges this God, that he increases in glory. Seems to be that as the Antichrist continues to tell the world about whatever God it is at this time. I know there's some people believe it's the same God that resisted, it's the same angel that resisted the message that Daniel was praying for. I know there's some theories about that, but just for our conversation, what do you make of Daniel chapter 11, 37, 38, and 39, where it gives you certain things about the Antichrist? Some people believe that he's going to be a homosexual. They take that from... Yeah, they take that from there. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there so you can kind of just give us your take on it. Other people believe that the God of forces is going to be some sort of, we know it's going to be demonic or a fallen angel or some entity, but that he is going to introduce some new God to so many people, some new way, some new philosophy or religion, and back this up. According to Thessalonians, he's going to do all of his works like after the working of Satan. We know that Satan operates in the second heaven, and we know that the Antichrist is going to do lying signs and wonders, and of course the false prophet will call the fire down from heaven. But let's just run with that idea. Let's start with Daniel chapter 11. Walk us through 37, 38, and 39, if you can. If you will,
all right,
and just give us your take on that and how you see this playing out with the Antichrist. And then I'd like for you to follow that up with when do you expect, and I know you just touched on that a little bit, but as far as the tribulation goes, and you and I tend to both be pre-tribulation. I lean a lot towards pan-trib. I preach an imminent rapture, but I tell people be ready all the time, and it might go into the tribulation a little bit. So anyway, let's just start there with Daniel 11, 37, 38, and 39. Excited to hear your interpretation for those verses.
Okay. Well, first, let me say this. I have taken those 4 verses apart with 4 other verses in Daniel in the latest edition of the Cosmic Conspiracy book that I wrote. On page 262, in that region there somewhere, I'm just trying to find it, be about 260, I think. Yeah, page 260.
I have that book.
Okay. Well, now, in that book, I've covered a retranslation, a very meticulous, I might add, retranslation of Daniel 11:36 through 11:40 or 11:39, somewhere in that region, 11:39. Okay, now, what I found about everybody says he's going to be a homosexual. Well, they say in Daniel 11:37 that he'll put himself, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. Now that's what the King James says in 11:37 of Daniel. But when you retranslate that, and I won't go through all the details of the breaking apart the word and all this stuff that I've done, but I'll tell you this, that there are hidden codings within Daniel that are not like number codings or anything. They're just very clever Hebrew and Sumerian text, the way they've done it, and some written that only Jews would understand who were, students of the Torah. But anyway, that verse, 11:37, retranslated, and I tell you in the book so you can check everything I say, it says like this: neither shall he, the Antichrist, regard the God of his fathers, nor the Son of the God of gods, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. Now, how did I get that out of what the original verse said is he won't regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God. And it's like this. He was coding a message in there. The desire of the women of Israel was to be the mother of the Messiah promised to them from ages past. They all wanted to be Jesus' mother. So when you read it that way, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the Son of the God, of God of gods, nor regard any other God. So just that alone tells you that there's coding trickery going on here. And the guy may be, effeminate or homosexual. I doubt it. But this is really in code for Daniel speaking to Hebrews, not to, Philistines or, unbelievers or Muslims or anybody else. He is simply saying that this guy is going to put himself against, the God of gods in the heavens, our Creator, and the Son of God, and any other God. He'll put himself above all of them. He'll boast and say, I'm bigger than any of them. But what I also found in those 4 verses and in 4 verses in Daniel 2 is that we're not dealing with just a human being, being great and wonderful all by himself. He gets help from, and it says this, an alien God. And he doesn't worship this God. He respects him. But a God is a super being with superpower, to do with mankind with his magic as he wishes. So when they use the term God, they're talking about whether it be lower gods or the God of gods, beings with immortal, like they never die, with immortal characteristics, with superpowers and wisdom and all the things that go with, an alien race, shall we say, that we see in the cartoons and the movies. But this will be our Creator and his servants down the chain of command. Some of them have rebelled following Satan, and that's what we're going to see give the power, the force, to the Antichrist of this age. And it says that this alien God will direct the Antichrist and will help him to overthrow nations and to overthrow the fortresses of the leading powers of the world. He will do it with force, military and technological force. Now, we don't know from Daniel's dream, or interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, about the 10 toes, how many are clay and how many are iron. But in these 8 verses here, I've seen that Satan views, and so does the Antichrist, views the people of various nations as weak, the humans, and some will get along with the aliens, their overlords, and some will not. And some will perhaps try to mate with them, but it won't work. He uses terms of this like clay, broken clay, or weak clay, or anyway, he uses several words for clay in there, which tell you there are different things that he's addressing about the nature of clay as applied to human beings under the foot of Satan and his minions, and then under the control of the Antichrist. And, Daniel 11:38 says, but the God of fierce forces in his protected place shall the Antichrist honor, and, not worship, but honor. And a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. And then in Daniel 39, the last of this 4 verses in this section here, thus he shall do in inaccessible fortresses with a hidden immortal being pretending to be a god, whom he shall acknowledge. He shall increase with glory, and he shall make them, it says, to rule over the defenders, meaning the earth people. And he shall separate the weak humans by lot in the future times. This is Stanley's interpretation, retranslating the Old Hebrew. And as I say, I don't use Strong's Concordance. I use a number of learned treatments of the ancient Hebrew. And we're talking, probably 3,500 years ago. Some of the words and things meant different things. And when King James translation came to being, they didn't always use the preferred older interpretation of those words. They used the more modern ones. And by correcting this, I've been able to find where the Garden of Eden was, in addition to all these other things we're talking about in the Antichrist. For instance, King James, when they translated the Hebrew for where one particular river of the 4 rivers out of Eden went, they say, and that river went around Ethiopia. And Ethiopia, of course, you know where that is, over Northeast Africa. But that's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew, it literally, without any extra translating abilities at all, just read it. It says, and that 3rd river, or whichever river it was now, I forget, but one of the 4 rivers went around the land known as Cush, with a K. And, of course, since there was a tribe in Ethiopia, northwestern Ethiopia, along the Red Sea, that called themselves the Cushites with a C. people accepted that in King James translation as meaning that was where that particular river of Eden went out and surrounded that land. But there's been this undercurrent in the biblical scholars saying there had to be another Cush, with a K, that was bigger, but we lost it over time. Well, I found it in Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan. They're all part of the ancient Cush. But that's because I stuck to the literal, absolute pronunciation and meaning of the ancient Hebrew and didn't assume that it was something I couldn't prove. Anyway, it does tell us that we're going to look at the equivalent of like the movie V that was on TV in the 70s, where a super race of beings appear to save Earth and mankind from extinction by their own hand or by natural events or whatever, and offer goodwill and new technologies and new medicine to the people of Earth, and they'll even appoint an Earth person to be their representative, much like happened in V, to be the go-between between them and their spacecraft and their secret places or whatever with the rest of humanity. And that go-between will be the Antichrist. So when we look about, alien presence and all the stuff pushing us toward the aliens are around us somewhere, they may be here already, and the Pope saying, well, aliens can be saved too. This is telling you, look, we're being prepped for a great deception to where we think that these super beings coming, the first lot, will be the return of the Messiah. And they'll be very convincing. They'll have videos or 3D holograms or something of even the crucifixion of Jesus, saying, look, we were there, and this is how it happened, and he was a great prophet, but, he's one of us, and we're back to help you. And they're going to pull things out, the little black hat that Felix the cat used to use. They're going to pull things out that will impress the dickens out of people that don't know any better. It'll be so clever that even the very elect would be fooled if such were possible. And that's the thing to remember. The church, the real awake church, will not be fooled because they will see through this deception. And that's why, so many of us that are in the forefront of the Christian church, the evangelical movement, are saying, watch out for this alien deception business. It's going to be a well-orchestrated deception. And it's not a simple one. It's a very complex one that's been coming to the forefront over the last 100 years, and it's coming to a head now. So that's Daniel 11:36 through 39. That's only 8 verses. That and the 4 verses in Daniel chapter 2. That's only 8 verses out of that entire book that I've had the time and the inspiration to retranslate in regards to the Antichrist and the world he's going to set up here, to warn people. And there's more to be translated from that if people want to do it. There's been a number of couples that have written to me or saw me at the lectures, and I explained to them how they can learn to read Hebrew and retranslate it very quickly using materials from Behrman House and from the AccordanceBible.com place that gives you software for your Mac or your Windows programs, computers, to read the Bible, to instantly see translations and interpretations of all the leading experts over the ages in Greek and Hebrew and some Chaldean and Arabic as well, just at the push of a button. And it makes it so much easier than when I did it by hand. I say, go in there and do what I did not finish. Go in there and dig into the verses in the book of Daniel, because Jesus pointed to Daniel as the prophet to listen to. Because in Jesus' time, Daniel was not considered to be an orthodox, trained, approved prophet. He was a self-starter that happened over in Babylon, and so they kind of poo-pooed him. But when Jesus said, as Daniel the prophet said, he promoted him right then to, watch this guy, he is one of mine. And if you read Daniel the prophet, and then read the Revelation to John, the book of Revelation, you will see that the two have parallels in many areas. And that tells you that the same mind, the same spirit, inspired Daniel that inspired John, who wrote the Revelation. So I think we are at the very very close edge of the beginning of the tribulation, if not just stepping into it this year. But as you say, Stevie, I say to people, and so does Holly, look, you need to prepare to endure. You need resources, food and medicine or whatever you need, and to be able to break free of the system, not be numbered, if that starts while we're still here, and to go into the tribulation a bit. I don't think we're going to go through all of it by any means, but to go through it enough that we see the man of sin identified without doubt in the prophetic writings. He'll become the living embodiment of what the prophecies tell us to watch for. When that happens, then any moment from that second on, the church can be raptured. When will it be? Will it be, in the first month of the tribulation, in the first year or two? I don't know. Somewhere at the beginning of the tribulation, I see that happening. So sure. We agree there, and I reserve the right to be wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Brother Stan, you're talking about the Vatican, and it's just so many reports that you can find on the Vatican's seemingly obsession with extraterrestrial life. I mean, where do you start? They built a state-of-the-art on top Mount Graham in Arizona that's sought after by high-level astronomers all over the world, from what I've read. And it seems that they have deliberately placed themselves in a position to be right where they need to be when what they call official disclosure takes place. Now, what I'm reading right now, official disclosure is the imminent and authorized public admission by world governments of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. All right, that's the meaning of the official disclosure. And I want to be clear to everyone in our listening audience, I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe in, Kazoo, Marvin the Martian, E.T. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about malevolent entities. I'm talking about fallen angels. I'm dealing with the thought process like when Paul said, if we or an angel from heaven, comes and preaches another gospel, let him be accursed if it's a gospel that they had not preached. Paul says, if anyone else preaches any other gospel but this, what's he talking about there? That's just one verse. But see, Stan, when we get into these areas, they make people uncomfortable. I've been there. There are people out there, maybe even listening right now, they think I've flipped my lid at the very mention of the word alien, or just like you was bringing up the movie V. And I'm trekking with you on that, brother. I'm right there because through the years I've become acquainted with this kind of study. But you brought up the Vatican, and I just want to key on that for a little bit. The Vatican, over the last 3 years, has dominated the news waves. From the time the Pope stepped down, clear up until recently, some of the things that the Pope is bringing together in the Middle East. He has risen to power in such an unprecedented way. I don't know we've ever seen anything like it. But when Tom Horn, who's scheduled to be on our show March the 23rd, we're excited about that interview as well, when he was writing Exo Vaticana with Chris Putnam, he actually got to talk to Guy Cosmonato. Now, he's one of the top-level astronomers for the Vatican. And Guy Cosmonato pointed Tom to a particular book. And the book that he pointed him to, as they were talking to him about this, the Vatican's telescope and their interest with extraterrestrials, and some of the high ups in the Vatican, they have made very distinct statements concerning their belief in extraterrestrial life or God's creation that is out there. There's been those classic quotes that people refer to from time to time, like saying they'll baptize aliens and all this stuff. But really, the one that really alarmed me, and we'll get back to Guy Cosmonato in a second, I'd like you to weigh in on this, is when I forget the man's name. It's slipping my memory right now. But there was a certain priest, and he was into the astronomy with the Vatican, and he kind of said something like this. We're the fold, because the Bible does talk about, when Jesus talks about he might have his other folds, right? And we're the fold that has fallen. We're of the fold of human beings that have fallen. But essentially, this guy was saying, at least from how I deciphered it, there's folds out in the outer flungs of the universe, perhaps, that have never fallen, and these people could actually teach us a thing or two. And that kind of got my red flag up when I read that comment. You can Google that if you're listening. You just Google priest that talks about the other folds, and then just put on the end of it ETs, and I'm sure you'll find the articles. It's very easy to find. But along those lines, when they were talking to Guy Cosmonauto and about the telescope and what do they expect and their belief in extraterrestrials and all these things, he pointed them to a book called A Case of Conscience by James Blish. And that book, A Case of Conscience, it's an older book. I mean, it was written in 1958. But it's
right.
about another world. I mean, you're probably familiar with it, Brother Stan, but essentially it kind of mirrors in a lot of ways what you were just saying. But, Brother Stan, there's so many Christians that think that I've went out on cloud nine here when you start talking about this. Just in your casual observance of the pulse of the church right now, do you see more people that are slamming the door when you start talking about this kind of stuff? Because, I mean, I talk about it too. Or do you see people starting to open up and understand, man, maybe there's something a little bit different to how these end times are going to play out? See, I grew up and I never heard of this kind of stuff. I never even heard that I remember of the Nephilim. You know, and the Nephilim is in Genesis chapter 6, obviously, and Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. And maybe we should have started there because that's kind of the springboard to everything we're talking about right now. So, Brother Stan, a lot of people think this is fantastic. I'm sure you've encountered that in your travels. How do you bring them along? What verses do you point to when you start talking about V in the movie? And I can, like I said, I can track with that. But some people would just say, my goodness, what are these guys talking about right now? Have you made, do you have a way that you have found to bring people up to speed that just shut it off as soon as you mention anything about how the Vatican's interested in extraterrestrials, how the Antichrist is going to have an allegiance with some kind of extraterrestrial god that we know is going to be a fallen angel? But how do you deal with that when people really come against you or, you know, say, hey, man, I have no idea what you're talking about. This sounds nuts to me. Well, what's your response a lot of times, or how do you bring them along?
Stevie, it's different with each case. I listen a lot. I don't get out and mix with people much. I do it over the radio shows where I interact with the host and we talk, and I don't know how the people are feeling out there because I don't hear from all of them, just a few. But recently I was invited to talk to a group of people, family and friends of a guy here in Colorado. And so Holly and I went there, and a very nice host, and we sat around in his living room and kitchen, and they had questions. They had heard that, you know, I talk about some interesting, strange things. And to be quite honest, none of them actually came against me. And these are not Christian folk. Some were, some weren't. And I'd say there were more just non-anything persons there than filled with the Spirit or born-again Christians. But if I were to try to do the same thing to, say, established religion, people that have comfortable pews in their churches, which I've done, they will most of the time turn on their heel and walk away. It's just too hard for them to change their thoughts or to research the Word any deeper than what they've been taught. They've already filed it away, and that's the way it is. That's done. I'm not going to change my opinion or grow in the Word. So for them, that's a different kind of witness. For those who are still seeking to find the Lord and to find the value of the Bible, it's easy because they will say, well, look, what do you think about what's happening here with the world economy? Or what do you think about the thing with Israel? Are we going to have a World War III over this? Those kind of questions pop up, and, hey, I just answer as the Spirit guides me in those days and say, look, here's what prophecy says about it, and you don't have to be a biblical scholar to see that the economy is in trouble. The world is in trouble. The weather's changing. We could be hit by a meteor and wipe out the planet. Going on with current events in the secular world, and then saying, but don't worry. Look, there's a way to get around this. There's a way to deal with this, and there's a way to avoid the pitfalls of what is coming, to be prepared. spiritually and physically. So that's why Holly and I both talk to him. And she talks about practical preparation for, foods and medicines in the Dare to Prepare book. I mean, it's huge. It covers everything. And that's to let you and your family and friends prepare for a number of threats and things that are probably going to be happening physically, so that people could say, okay, well, I've got a hedge against the banks closing. I've got my food and water, here. I've got my rent paid 6 months ahead of time, or my mortgage, and blah blah blah, and that's their physical prep. But then the most important one is in the cosmic conspiracy is the spiritual preparation, where we say, look, you may die before the rapture occurs. A lot of us may. So the important thing is to be sure that you're on God's team, that you are accepted by our Messiah, and that's a simple process, and keep it up every day. And that's how I lead them in, is by them asking me questions about their concerns over their 401k or this or that, and relating it back to what the Bible has already told us would happen, and it's now happening. I guess that's the best general advice I can give you, Stevie. I just am honest and try to relate prophecy to current events to them.
Sure. And Brother Stan, I've ran into some people, just like you said, they're very open to this kind of thing. Sometimes you get some closed-minded individuals, they just don't want to hear anything different. But, when you read Revelation and you read about how the false prophet's going to call fire down from heaven, and you read about the image of the beast, that he's going to give the power to speak. When you read Daniel chapter 11, how the Antichrist is going to honor a God that his fathers did not know, a God of forces or a God of fortresses. When you read Thessalonians about how the Antichrist, all of his dealings and his working is going to be after the working of Satan. And we know that Satan is the prince and power of the air. We know that these abduction stories that people experience, UFOs, sightings that people report on, a lot of what they're saying is far too eccentric to believe, but it's far too consistent to ignore. And when you get into the Bible prophecy and you begin to see there is a supernatural aspect to this, I mean, there is going to be somebody call fire down from heaven. Now, before we get into just how supernatural that is, Brother Stan, I've heard that since I've been a kid, it seems, talking about how this alliance, this Antichrist alliance, is going to call fire down from heaven. The false prophet's going to do that. Have you ever given any thought about what exactly that's going to be? Do you think that's just going to be lightning or fireballs? Or have you ever thought about it? I mean, there's so much speculation, but we know that's going to happen.
Yeah, I have. And in this technological age, in this age of information where we've seen it all, on TV and the movies and stuff, all those special effects, lightning by itself wouldn't be impressive unless lightning went straight up into the heavens, and the cameras and satellites caught it. This came from up in the upper atmosphere down and struck a particular target. Now, how could we do that? Well, it can be done. It's not easy, but it can be done using HARP-type transmitters and triangulating what they call the impedance channel. It's like making a wire, an invisible wire in the heavens, from the upper levels of our atmosphere down to the target, and you lower the resistance of the air and the clouds and everything else all the way down to your target, and then you've pumped up the upper atmosphere and the ionosphere to have an extremely high charge relative to the surface of the Earth. And it's also there from the sun bombarding it anyway. But you make an instantaneous short between the ionosphere and your target. And believe me, that would impress even the guys, that say lightning and laser cannons are neat, but something that big would make a thunderclap you'd hear around the world. It's huge. So I think it could be something like that. Otherwise people wouldn't believe it. I mean, it's like nowadays, if you saw a flying saucer 30 feet in diameter, the question would be, well, is that really space people, or is that something? Yeah, I mean, hey, we're not impressed with that, but every engineer and physicist on the planet that's gone through formal training will say, if a 1 mile in diameter spacecraft parks over a city, and it stays there without thrusters or anything else you can see, they would be impressed, because you don't see those around town. That's not in normal human technology. So that would impress, just like the lightning bolt would. So I see this going to be a technological show that will convince, the diehard skeptics in the cathedral of physics and engineering and science that, hey, this is not from around here. When in fact I know how they do it, but still, people that aren't aware of these things technologically will look at it as magic, as superpower. But we have these things. We have the technology now.
Very interesting. Well, we're almost to the top of the hour here. It's Monday, January the 26th, 2015. We're on the East Coast, and we've got snow all around us, and we are live with Stan Deyo, tucked deep in the mountains of the Appalachian. And we're excited about this show here this evening, and we've covered a lot of ground in the first hour. Just if we can review in a nutshell here, we talked about Solomon. We talked about the mark of the beast. We talked about how at the end of Solomon's reign he spiraled out of control, and he actually tried to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam had to flee. And then Brother Stan was talking to us about the correlation between the mark of the beast and King Solomon and the 666 number that appears in his story, and it's just a fascinating study. It's I'll be honest, I can't quite get my mind wrapped around all of it, but I've heard it a little bit before, and it's quite fascinating to me. And then we also got into the God of forces. And Brother Stan, just for our audience, when we was talking about the Antichrist will serve the God of forces or the God of fortresses, just in simple terms, real quick, can you just kind of sum that up again, exactly what you believe that means, the God of forces, what that will be? You have the Antichrist present on the earth, introducing the world to this strange God.
Well, it's quite a simple concept. The execution of it will be more spectacular, but the concept of a God or a super being of forces backing the Antichrist is simple. The 196, I don't know how many nations there are, but at least 196 nations of the United Nations, no two of them can really agree on everything, religion, politics, economics, whatever. I mean, you put 196 of them together in the same room, good luck on anybody agreeing on anything worth a darn, especially the majority of them, to bring the planet into a peaceful one-world government like Jesus is going to give us. So if you take Jesus out of the equation, as many of our global planners did, not only in the United States, but in Great Britain and West Germany, there were some that were brought in after the war was over, Australia and Canada and New Zealand. There's a lot of countries been involved in this. And they said, look, the people of Earth are so pig-headed, so stubborn, stiff-necked, as the Bible would call them, that we can't get them to agree on common economics, common religion, or anything. The United Nations type approach by cooperation has failed. We just can't get it to work. And the League of Nations had folded before that and convinced them of this already. And these planners, after the end of World War II, said, well, okay, look at what Hitler did. He tried to force it by just eliminating those that disagreed, and what would be left would be those that would follow orders, and he could force a one-world government, philosophy, religion, economy, etc. But the French resistance proved this wouldn't work because, the tighter that Hitler or the Nazi Party squeezed the fist, the more guys slipped through the fingers and became terrorists that blew up bridges and buildings and made the order break down. So they knew that alternative one, forcing people, wouldn't work. Alternative one was the United Nations, that coercion or cooperation wouldn't work. Alternative two, forcing people into a workup that wouldn't work. But alternative three was, okay, look, let's fool the people. Let's fool the people into accepting a one-world order long enough, say 7 years, so that they can see that it will work and everyone can be happy and, fair income for a fair day's wage, that kind of stuff. Let us do that, they said. But we have to do it in a manner that people will pay attention all over the planet, no matter what religion, what ethnic thing they are, what financial structure they're in, what political view. And the only way they could see to do that was like when we were children, when we slept in a bedroom together with our brothers and sisters and whatever, and Dad slept down the hallway in his bedroom. And when we would fight at bedtime and make noise, and he would yell out, "Be quiet," and we wouldn't listen, and he would yell out, "Be quiet, don't fight anymore, just, I need to sleep. If you don't, I'm going to come down there and I'm going to bring the belt." And the third time, when they started fighting again in the middle of the night, the door to the room was closed, of course, and so Dad comes down, and bang, the door flies open up against the wall, the doorknob hits a loud sound, and there he is with the hall light illuminating him, and in his right hand is the belt. Now then, they know he's serious, and he can do them real harm if they don't get together and not fight anymore and go to sleep, which they do. So they're using this force analogy. The third alternative is the threat of force without having to use it by a display of technological force and energy that utterly astounds all the people of the earth long enough to establish that one world dictatorship, which, they hope will bring them peace, but it won't. And that's why Daniel talks about the Antichrist of this age following a super being, a little g god, demigod type of technology and of force. He will use the technology and force, the Antichrist will, and give over to the Antichrist and to Satan who backs him certain lands and countries and regions of the world and the peoples of those lands in payment for the technology to rule the world and to bring everybody into this happy one world government in the beginning before they see the truth of it. So that's why he talks about
Very, very interesting. Brother Stan, right now we're seeing Russia in the news, out of the news. People say that America is trying to put the squeeze on the Russian economy right now, that they're going to try to bring them down. There's other people saying if we do that, this could be bad. This could cause the bear to come down into the Middle East and take the oil. My dad was talking about that, who's on the line right now listening. He was talking about that scenario playing out today. I just wanted to ask you a question right now about Russia. What role right now do you see Russia playing as we race to the finish line of the dispensation of grace, as we're getting ready for the rapture of the church and to start into the Great Tribulation? Or, like I say, we might already be in the tribulation, like you talked about. But either way, as we're getting to the end, what role do you see Russia playing? How do you think the next 6 to 8 months, year and a half is going to play out between Russia and the relations with that region and the rest of the world?
Well, Russia, under the leadership of Putin at the moment, are really gaining favor in a lot of places because Putin gets things done. I mean, if I were to have to vote between Putin or Obama to be the leader of my tribe, I would pick Putin over Obama in a flash. He's got charisma. As long as you're on his side and doing what he wants you to, he's a great leader. But here's what's going to happen. Russia and the allies that come with them, probably Germany as well, they will have hooks put in the jaws and force them to come down into the Middle East against Israel. Now, they don't particularly want to do this militarily because they know that Israel's got nukes, and it's going to hurt them to come down and try to get Israel. Now, they're going to have to do that when Israel makes preemptive strikes probably against Iran and the nuclear facilities, and when Israel gets into shooting fights with any of the other neighbors, whether it be Egypt, Syria, or whatever. Now, to have hooks in the jaws means that Russia has been snared, hooked like a fish, and they're going to be pulled down there against their will. It's not going to be something that they go down to do. They're being forced to do it by treaties or by financial situations or whatever. Now, for them to do that, the United States, as a military power, has to be out of the picture. Putin knows that the damage would be so all-encompassing on Russia should the American military be allowed to fight them with nukes, that they can't afford to have America as an organized military power supporting Israel in the Middle East. Now, that we can see the groundwork being laid for that now. Obama has so weakened our defenses and our military and various other things in our country, including the economy and the morale of the country. He's so weakened us that we could become inward looking and isolate ourselves from the Middle East and absolutely abandon supporting Israel, because we have our own internal terrorist problems, our own internal civil war, and our own internal martial law forced upon us. And that would be so catastrophic to America, an armed America, an angry America, whether it be over money differences or over color differences or over religious differences. We would be seeing groups of fighting all over the country all at once. That would absolutely neutralize the United States as a viable force to defend Israel in the Middle East. And we're moving that way. Every time that Obama, insults Netanyahu or Israel or turns his head the other way and doesn't help them, we're one step closer to being totally out of the picture when Russia is forced to come down into the Middle East to defend the Arab nations against Israel, because Israel cannot take a first nuclear strike and get over it. If a nuke hits Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, Israel is gone. There will be no real defense there. So Israel will be forced to make a preemptive strike, whether it be nuclear or just aircraft or conventional explosives or whatever. They're going to have to go into Iran and hit the Iranian nuclear facilities and the missiles that they've got or whatever. They cannot afford to let them launch when they're so close to the borders of Israel. There would just be no stopping it, no time. It's a sad thing, but when Iran says openly, we want to see Israel gone, we want to destroy Israel from the map, they mean it. And when a country tells you that and starts arming up like Hitler did, you better believe it. And that's why Russia will play the part, and Russia will suffer, her military will suffer hugely, and be mysteriously, whether by radiation or by disease, be killed on the mountains of northern Israel when they do invade. We know that because their dead bodies, after they're defeated by this mystical process, we don't know whether God does it or whether bioweapons or nukes do it to them, but the bodies will drop all over the mountains of Israel, and they'll take 7 years to bury the dead from those armies, and they will send special teams out to bury them, so that anybody comes across a dead body that was killed by the Russian in the Russian troops, they have to mark it and say, here is a dead body, avoid this area until the cleanup crew gets here. It might be because it's radioactive, it might be because it's got a disease, a bioweapon of some sort was used, and take the weapons that are left by the soldiers and use them for firewood, burn them. It'll take, a long time to burn the weapons. I think it might be 7 months that they go out and bury them, and 7 years that they burn the weapons that are left behind by the Russians. But it does tell you it will not end well for the Russian army, and hence for Russia as well. And that's kind of the way I see that happening. And we're there. We're very close to that point.
It just feels like it. It just seems like that the world in general is waiting for the next big thing to happen. I can't quite explain it, but at this point, doesn't it just seem like nothing would surprise you to come across the news right now? It's just it's like just a volatile situation, globally speaking.
Oh yeah. Look, I get up and look at the news on the computer and on the Fox News and stuff every morning, first thing, waiting to see what shoe's dropping today.
Yeah, absolutely. But Brother Stan, just one or two more things here, and I know we can't keep you all night, but something that's made a comeback in the news media here lately, and to really get this story out the way it needs to be. I go back to about 2008 when I was talking to my dad, and he told me check out this video on YouTube, and lo and behold, I became acquainted around 2008 with Planet X, Nibiru, and all these other names that, AKAs they give it. So people were saying it's going to come in 2003, and then I learned that, and it didn't come. And then 2008 was a big year, and then 2012 was a big year, and it didn't come. And all this misinformation and disinformation and false flags and, oh my goodness, all these words I didn't even hear before as I got down into studying Planet X. And one thing that I remember is when I was studying it in 2008, I got real into it. And then I started seeing through the years, well, maybe there's not a whole lot to this. But I remember the researchers said in their dialogue that as we get closer to the event of this planet, this is their words many years ago, you'll start hearing the news media leak some stuff out, and you'll start. So I just thought, well, we'll see, Well, lo and behold, over the last year, I've heard more reports about the possibility of undiscovered planets past Neptune that have disturbed the orbits of the ETNOs, or the scientifical extreme trans-Neptunian objects. I think I said that right. And causing these ETNOs to wobble. And now in the mainstream, it appears, we're hearing more and more reports about the possibility of another planet, at least 3 times the size of Earth, and I guess some people say much larger, that could have a elliptical orbit around the sun of 200 AUs, which, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it takes Pluto. Pluto has, 33 astronomical units from the sun. If I'm getting that right, Pluto takes a long time.
That would be it. Well, Pluto's orbit is very egg-shaped, very extreme. It's an extreme ellipse, and it's thought that Pluto might actually be a moon of Neptune that got loose. But anyway, the point is that
takes it a long time.
Yeah, and I've done the calculations. I use the same equations that the astronomers do at the observatories. And assuming that this was correct, and we had a mass 3 times that of Earth, or even equal to Earth, traveling with a long elliptical orbit of, say, a round trip of 3,600 years, giving any credence to Sitchin at all, or to the Mayan calendar, that kind of stuff. And for something that size, and with an orbit like that, and with its mean orbit being way out there into the close to the Kuiper Belt, it would have to be in sight now to be of effect, because it will take about a maximum of 7, maybe up to 11 years, depending on variation of the equation, for it to come into the inner 5 planets, swing around the sun, and go back out to the rest of its orbit for 3,600 years. I'm not saying it's not there, reporting anything back to me from Australia or from New Zealand. So I know that something will fall into the Earth, a bright, burning star, it says, and kill a third of the fish in the sea, and that the sun will do something very extraordinary, and the heat of the sun, or the light of the sun, will be as 7 times brighter than it is now. It's not necessarily 7 times hotter, but brighter. And that's a solar event, which may be triggered by a large mass coming close to it. But I just cannot get anything that I can say to myself is definitive proof that such a thing exists, or if it does, that it's close enough to us in the next 10 to 12 years to do any real damage as a planet, or even as a planetoid.
Sure, and when I studied that Revelation, the 6th seal, and when the 6th seal is open, let's see, there's a great earthquake, the sun turns to sackcloth, the moon turns into blood, and the stars fall from heaven like a fig tree that shakes her untimely figs. And, of course, that's when things really get chaotic on the earth, to say the least, and the men start running to the mountains, asking the rocks to fall on them, hide them from the face of the Lamb that sits on the throne. Of course, I'm bringing this from memory right now. But when I read that 6th seal, it seems like that could be talking about a pole shift, because the mountains and the islands all move out of their place. It seems like something just impacts the earth with such force, it's almost like nothing we've ever seen before. Now, if that is a pole shift, and I just want you to weigh in on this, because there's a lot of debate about what this could be, I'm sure, amongst the prophecy teachers. Could that be caused by a planet that's coming into our solar system? Because where are all the asteroids and meteorites going to come from that just start falling one right after the other, like a fig tree shakes her untimely figs? I mean, or would that be, because I think all this stuff has been, I say planned, but, you know, Earth's on an orbit, and our solar system's moving, and I guess to say it another way, I just don't think God all of a sudden is just going to send meteorites out of nowhere. I think that they're already out there somewhere, and we're going to get involved with them somehow. Does that make sense to you? How do you see that sixth seal, and do you think that's a pole shift, and do you think it could be caused by a heavenly body that's got a large mass to it?
Well, let me start by saying this. A large meteor can hit the Earth and tilt it severely. We know that, or we're reasonably certain, that the Chicxulub meteor that hit the Gulf of Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula caused the Earth to tilt from its almost vertical position to 23.5 degrees off vertical, where we are now. Now, the question is, well, it doesn't really matter for this argument, but they say that happened 20, 30 million years ago, and I dispute that, but scientifically, not just emotionally. But we know that something that large can hit. The planet can survive, but the planet can tilt on its axis. And it's already tilted. Should we get that thing that the Revelation says that falls into the sea, that burning star, that wormwood, it may hit with enough impact to cause the Earth to tilt even farther, or whether it's in the same direction or whether it's a direction that's a net result of the 23.5 degrees and whatever angle this thing hits us at, it doesn't really matter. Something like that will move the surface of the Earth that floats on a mantle. It will move the surface like, you know, the skim on top of pudding when you're cooking it and you run the spoon through it. It will move us. It's done it before. So, yes, I think something like that could be affected by a large mass impacting. It's a large meteor. And it could be that some of the larger asteroids in the asteroid belt are dislodged from their comfortable orbit by another larger mass moving in through them and causing them to be kicked out of their orbit. It would still require a few years for that to manifest, in most cases, to get to where it would hit the Earth, enter the Earth's orbit. So it depends upon where the object is that disrupts the asteroid belt and where the Earth is at the time and how long it takes the dislodged meteors of the asteroid belt or the asteroids to interact with Earth's orbit and the Earth itself, and then become a shower of stars. Now, it might be, instead of that it's something coming from the sun itself or from a region of space in our galaxy that we pass through, because it does say that there will be like a cloud, sackcloth, but it's like a cloud that comes around the sun in the older scriptures. And that cloud coming around the sun, we don't know whether it means because the solar system is passing through a cloud that the cloud goes around the sun. That doesn't seem to fit because the cloud would have to go through all the planets. It's more like the sun itself is going into a phase state, a change, and that it blows off part of its outer shell in a cloud that surrounds it. And so you could only see it'd be like a zillion little sunspots that join together, so that instead of having sunspots that are dark, you would only have little patches of sunlight to get through. Looking through the sun, through a sackcloth of hair, you would see that, just little pinpoints of light, and the rest of it would be dark, while it's going through that change and throwing off this cloud around the sun. Now, when it throws off the cloud to block the light of the sun, it will also shift the value of the light, the color spectrum, when it reflects down to Earth from the moon. And it will look as though the moon is turned to blood because of this dark shielding, this cloud that will shield the light of the sun. And that's not the end of it. That's just the beginning with the sun.
Sure.
Because the sun has to go brighter, and people have to hide under rocks and caves because of the heat of the sun, and for a few weeks. But in the throwing off of that cloud, that debris from the sun, it could actually come out toward us in the form of solar wind or solar particulates bigger than protons, the actual chunks that cool and enter our atmosphere as stars or bright meteors falling all over the planet. Now that's kind of more the way I'm leaning than this Planet X disturbing the asteroid belt and things like that, because the sun plays a huge part in the prophetic judgments in the Revelation of John. From darkening, from the skies dropping, stars or meteors down on the earth, from a large heavenly body falling into the ocean, and from the heat of the sun later becoming so much that it fries a third of the planet's surface, green grass and trees and fish. And that's a sudden event that will occur while the sun is while the planet Earth is facing the sun. It will hit 1/3 of the planet, not half of it, and then it'll be over. But the damage will be done. All the living things underneath that will probably be cooked. But the planet will then heat up after that event because of the residual heat and re-radiating into the atmosphere and around the planet. So, anyway, I could be wrong.
Sure. No, I appreciate hearing your theories on it, man. I do, because I listen to a lot of guys talk, and I appreciate the guys that bring up Planet X, and I do think they're based off the most recent reports I've been hearing in the news media, which I know you can't trust the news media, but it just seems like they believe there could be something out there, and we know that eventually Wormwood is going to make a visit. We all believe that we're so close to the end of this dispensation of grace, the church age, that it could happen tonight. The rapture could take place. So we know we're here. So I'm like you at this point, man. You just got to be ready for anything. But I had two more questions, if we can, and then we can let you go. And I appreciate you so much being with us. The first question is just simply, what do you make of the lunar tetrad, of course, the blood moons, and how each blood moon falls on a high Jewish feast day for the last time, I'm told, for almost 800 years, perhaps. And do you think that these are signs? Do you think that that they mean something imminent? A lot of people, myself, believe that it has something to do with the nation of Israel. I can't pinpoint exactly what, but just the blood moons, the 4 blood moons. If you could just talk to us a few minutes about what's your take on the 4 blood moons.
Well, it could well be some kind of a signpost. I know the last of the 4 will occur, I think it's in September of this year, down toward the end of 2015. And not that a catastrophic event will occur on the maximum blood moon, position. But somewhere around that time, we can probably look for major events in world affairs, I think. And when I see current events moving us towards some action toward the last part of this year, last quarter, in the economy and possibly before with the situation in Israel and Iran, it lends credence to the tetrad, the last part of it being, pretty interesting. So, yeah, I think that they do have value. I think it will be linked to Israel somehow, but I don't know how.
I do too. Then the follow-up question to that, Brother Stan, just in however long you want to take. I mean, we got a 2-hour show. We don't have to go 2 hours. We'll let you just take us home however you want here. But the question would be this: just in a brief synopsis, if you had to talk to the Christians listening tonight, or even the non-Christians, of course, you're talking about preparedness. The part of the synopsis that I would like to really listen to is what should people do just basically right now that have not made any preparations. And then if you could just close us out with talking about just your forecast for the next, however many months, if you had to say, this is what I think is going to play out, and this is where I think it's going to go, even down into the election. I'd love to hear you just kind of talk about your thoughts about the upcoming 2016 election, who you could see getting in, and just if you could just encapsulate that in a few minutes and just let us know, prepping, and then your thoughts about the future and what you could see unfolding over the next 6, 8, 10 months, 2 years.
Oh, you ask a hard thing. I don't have my crystal ball polished tonight, but I will guess at what I think may be happening.
And that's all I'm asking.
All right. As long as people understand that. This is not cast in stone. We're just talking across the airwaves here.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, the next few months, well, let's see. Trying to figure out where to start this. Israel will be the thing we watch, and because it's being stomped on so hard, so slighted by our current administration, I think that the events will come this year, which will put Israel in the focus of world attention, where the world will say, Israel caused all this. They did a preemptive strike or whatever they've done, and the world will hate Israel, and it will be easier for the Arab nations to band together to come after Israel, which will force Israel to do even more, and Russia will then be called into the melee. But America just cannot participate in that. We are going to be in such disarray here. And one of the things that kind of, people forget or don't consider is that when the Antichrist takes over, he's going to come in with the help of Satan, but there'll be super beings posing as our alien brothers or some rubbish like that. When they take over, to gain the man in the street support, they will say to all those greedy Illuminati people, we're going to get rid of them for you because they have oppressed you. And people will cheer. Even a lot of us that don't know better will say, hey, they're getting rid of the Illuminati. Those devil-worshipping, greedy devils that, have enslaved us and turned the world into a feudal system run by corporations. Hey, and banks, hey, we're tickled to death. You've gotten rid of the bad guys. And that's one of the ways that they will convince the people of the earth that they are on our side and the Antichrist is really a good guy and he's really helping the man in the street. And as far as leadership of the various countries, those guys are easily manipulated and changed out or controlled by Satan, so that it's not them he has to convince. It's the people of earth that he needs their support and their adoration, their worship. So that's what I see coming. And for the people in the church, the believers, and for those who are borderline trying to figure out why they should believe, you'll need to prepare for some severe threats that are coming, some severe situations in the weather, huge changes in the climate, military attacks, EMP attacks that destroy electronics, shortage of gasoline, diesel, shortage of food, famines, strange weather that kills our crops, flooding on the coastal regions, inland several hundred miles from tsunamis that are formed by various impacts in the oceans and whatever. I mean, to think this isn't going to happen is just not going to make it go away. We get hit by meteors all the time, some bigger than others, some that burst over Tunguska, over Russia and Siberia, and destroy 1,000 square miles or whatever, as though it were a nuclear blast when it wasn't. These things do happen, and statisticians will tell you don't worry about it, it'll never happen again in our lifetime, but it will. And the 5 wise virgins of the 10 virgin tale, 5 were wise, 5 were unwise. The unwise virgins did not bring enough oil out to wait for the groom to come and collect them at midnight. The 5 wise virgins did have enough oil, extra oil for their lamps, to say, Lord, Hineni, Lord, here I am. In Hebrew, it's Hineni. And they stayed, and the 5 foolish virgins said, look, we're running out of oil, give us some of yours. And the 5 wise ones said, no, we knew ahead of time that we were supposed to carry this because we listened to the groom and knew that he might tarry a while, so we would need to have the oil for our lamps to say we are still on board, we're here waiting for you. And if you know the Israeli courtship order of progress of it, or the menu for Israeli courtship in the ancient days, the intended bride of the groom had to wait for a surprise arrival of the groom after they made the agreement to get married to pick her up from her father's house. And usually at midnight, at the dark time, he would come with his friends, and he would wait out in the street while his friends went into her home and gathered her and her bridesmaids out in a secret abduction, which we think is equivalent to the rapture, and take them to the wedding to be married. Now, so the 5 wise virgins, and the fact that there are 5, not one wise virgin, but 5, tells you there are multiple members of the bride. The bride is like the church, forming one entity as a bride, but they are individual brides, beings. So we tell people, okay, it's not just like oil for your lamp. Oil is representing the Spirit and the faith. Stay with the game. Stay with the Lord, and have the supplies you need to endure in the darkness until He comes at the midnight hour to get you. That means physical preparation in food and water, and it may mean that you have to leave your home, leave your apartment in the city, and go to a place to meet Him. And then again, it may not. You may be able to store enough food and water and stuff to survive for a week or 2, a month, 2 months, until He comes for the church. Obviously, some people will die before He comes, and they shall rise before those who are alive at the time of the rapture. They will come up first. I don't know whether we'll see the dead arrive, but arise and come into the land like they did at the time that Jesus arose from the grave. The saints were seen walking in the streets of Jerusalem at that time. But whether it'll be like that or not, I don't know. It won't be every dead person on the planet. It'll just be those who died in the faith of Jesus, and the faith of the Hebrew nation, and were saints and prophets and things of that nature. So there won't be billions of those, but there will be a fair number. And whether we will see them come out of the grave or not, I don't know. However, like the wise virgins, you need to have the supplies you need out in the bush or in the darkness, waiting for the Messiah to come. And that may mean we have to leave our homes, our apartments, and go to a meeting place. But before you go wandering off to the meeting place, I'm pretty sure that the Spirit of the Lord or an angel or something will say to you, come with us, go to this place. It's not necessary that happens that way, but it may. And again, you don't want to, as Jesus mentioned in Matthew 23, do not be fooled by people saying the Messiah is here in this place or that place, go to Him there. So there's a fine line drawn between the Spirit telling you, get ready and endure where you are or in a place close, and being misled to go to the Messiah in some secret place, because when He comes, it will be as the lightning shoots from east to west. It says everyone will see and know. So it won't be a secret meeting at that time, but that's probably a different event to the rapture. So anyway, I just think that the important thing is to not be deceived by what is coming, and to be prepared to even leave your home rather than take the number, the financial digital number, because you can't take it and say, well, I'm still a believer in Jesus, and take the number so that you can keep your house and your 401k and everything else in the New World Order. So if that time comes and we're still here, you'll need the preparation stuff to walk out or to drive out to, someplace to get away from the cities where you can squat on land, national forests or something. So I don't know whether it's that literal or whether the 5 wise virgins is just saying, be like those wise virgins at the midnight hour, wait for the Messiah, and have enough faith to wait and not be swayed by those who would lead you in a different direction or tell you to give it up.
Great. This is Stan Deyo here on Interstellar Realities Radio, and we have just had such a great discussion tonight. Stan, if you could just take a few minutes, talk about your website, the resources that are available there. I know you just touched on prepping a little bit, and you have one of the greatest prepping books in all the world available at your website. Not only that, you have so much other material that is just jam-packed with information that's relative to the life that we're in right now. And the Cosmic Conspiracy. You have a new series, lectures, I believe, on the Garden of Eden. And not only that, your website it's just an information hub all by itself. So you just talk about StanDeyo.com for a few minutes before we get off the phone here tonight?
Yeah, sure. For years, Holly ran that site, gathering news from all over the world, from about 4:30 in the morning till about 10 in the morning every day except, Saturday. And she would gather the news relative to Christians and Jews, saying, look, here are current events, and they may relate to prophecy by such and such, or here are items of news which tell you need to prepare yourself for food prices or oil shortages or whatever. Now, she stopped that last year. We'd, I think, given enough time and effort at our expense that it was time to stop that and keep our sanity, because all the bad news that we were finding was just overwhelming. But now then what she's done is she's put the site up with a number of the news articles over the years that she reported to people on the site on the front page. She's put them into categories, earth changes, economy, terrorism, food and water, about Israel, all articles, relating to those things. And then she's got interviews that I've given and that others have given that we thought were important. You'll see little tags on the top of StanDeyo.com, StanDeyo.com. Free prep info is the first thing, and then nuclear biological preparation, that's free. Threat watches, you can buy our books and CD-ROMs or DVDs. We've got, I think, 8 of Len Marzulli's Watcher series available on our website, shopping cart and stuff. And how to grow your own gardens, Garden Gold. We charge for that. It's an e-book, but it's only like $12 or something, and you can just download it and print it. And we use darn near everything in that book in our own garden. So we've tested, this stuff to share with people about how to be farmers should we have to be here that long. And there's geophysics information, astrophysics, special reports of dream visions that I've had. There are not many of them, but they were important and still are important about what is to come. So those things are free and available on the website. And as I said, plus I think, I don't know how many of the past radio and like blog talk shows I've done, but the reports are stored there on our website, on the server, and you can just download those and listen to them. So,
excellent.
The newest edition is the Garden of Eden lecture, which also has the Solomon lecture on it, and there's also a DVD which we're out of stock of at the moment called Serengeti and Ngoro, which it's the Ngoro crater in northern Tanzania is where the Garden of Eden was, and there's no doubt in my mind now the rivers are easily identified with the new satellite data that we've got and have put into the DVDs in the lecture series there. You have to pay for it, but we had to pay to get it, so
sure.
I don't apologize for that. That's what pays our bills here.
Absolutely, Brother Stan.
Well, and look, a laborer is worthy of his hire, and we have worked hard to bring this information to people and to gather it and put it into the Dare to Prepare book and into the Cosmic Conspiracy book and into the Garden of Eden Solomon DVDs. I'm just blown away. The good Lord just, I apparently stumbled into it, but I'm sure the good Lord led me into discovering the Garden of Eden kind of by accident, because I was working on another project which I stumbled upon something there and did finally find the real Garden of Eden. And so, it's important to all of the face of the world to know where we started. And it's there.
Sure, and I would love to get you back on the show sometime just to talk a little bit about the possibilities of the pre-Adamic world, the ancient universe, the gap theory, and all the other things that we could get into. They'd take another 2 hours easily. But, Brother Stan, thanks so much.
That's true. And we'll get together as the Lord sees fit. There's just so much, as you say, it's overwhelming when you start to dig into it and try to put all the pieces together in this gigantic puzzle. It's just amazing.
But it's like the greatest journey ever. It's just like it never gets old. It's so exciting. It's exhilarating, and I just find myself all day long thinking about something that has to do with the universe or the end times or something I'm listening to. I listen to you a lot from the Hagman and Hagman show, and I appreciate you coming on there on Tuesday nights. You always have such great insight. And their show in general is just incredible, and there's so many awesome guests that come in and out of that Blog Talk Radio show, man. I've got acquainted with so many cool ministries from listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report, so I appreciate them as well. And Brother Stan, I just thank you for being on with us tonight, and look forward to sending you an email or two, maybe the next several months, getting back together and talking about some of this other information.
You know, one thing I might say here, Stevie, you just triggered my memory on this. I think it's important for people that, listen to our interviews, just not only yours and mine, but, Marzulli's and, Chris Putnam and all the other guys, that you download the ones that are important, in your opinion, for people to understand what's happening, and keep a hard copy of it, like a DVD or a CD-ROM or something, because we don't know how much longer we'll be able to have free use of Blog Talk and the Internet to distribute these things to people who want to know. So make copies that you can use as witness tools later.
Man, that's really good. That's really good right there, man. Thank you for sharing that. I never really thought about that, but yeah, it's so true. One day we're not going to be able to do this. And we're going to want to go back and revisit. Yeah, it's exactly right. Well, Brother Stan, we thank you again, and we love you. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight on Interstellar Realities